Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Thank you guys for coming in. Hope you guys are doing well. Here we are on video 3 of the JMRI series, and I want to take you through setting up the yard on our route here. So we've got 2 staging yards we talked about for the KCS. We have a 3rd staging yard for the CN, where we're going to have some interchange traffic. And whenever the trains leave these staging yards, they need a way to interact with each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an interchange yard on the route. And this yard is going to serve the car movement between the 2 railroads and the car movement for the local that's going to run to the town. So we're going to set up that interchange yard in JMRI today. For you to do this, what you need, whether you're doing an actual model railroad or you're doing this from Trainz, you need to know how many spurs you have, you need to have names for them, and you need to know how long they are, all right? I went ahead and did all that before the video so that we don't use up time waiting for me to do that, so let's get right to it. I'm going to add a location. You can technically put a yard inside a town if you want to, but I personally like to create my main yards as a separate location all to themselves. So I'm going to call this the interchange yard. If it was a railroad that I was actually, building for myself, I'd have some sort of name for the yard, but here I'm just trying to keep it simple so that things are easily descriptible and understandable. All right, we're going to click add location. I'm going to keep all of my directions open for now. Technically, my KCS trains run east-west, but my CN trains run north-south technically, so I want to keep those open. If you close these off, then this yard will not be able to be served by our north-south CN train, and that's not what we want, so I'm going to keep those open. All right, for now, for the location, I'm going to keep all these cars selected as well. This also has locomotive selections like electric, diesel, gas turbine, steam, all that stuff. I'm going to keep all that for now. I'll talk more about that in a different video when I talk about car types. All right, so if you want to use a yard track for storing cars, just to be stored there when they're empty or loaded and then get picked up for trains from time to time, and you want to use a particular yard switcher, then you would go to yards and you would create some yard tracks. The thing about yard tracks, you have some limitations in JMRI because these are really just kind of more or less for setting up spots to just store cars. If you want a car to sit on a yard track because it's going to transfer to a different train, where it basically interchanges with a different train, even if it's on the same railroad, you want to create what's called a classification interchange track. All right, so for us, every one of the 4 tracks in our yard are going to be classification interchange tracks because each one of these tracks is going to serve a purpose of interchanging cars from one train to another. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and create each individual track, and I will talk about what each track is doing as we create them. So I'm going to go to Add CI Track. It gives us this menu. We have to give it a name first. So I'm going to call mine Track 1. All right, now Track 1 I have set up to be the cars that are going outbound. So I'm going to say Out B for outbound. All right, then I know those are outbound cars. And I measured it. This is 1,188 feet. All right, I'm going to hit add CI track there at the bottom. And now, if I needed to limit some car types, I would do that now. All right, in this case, we don't need to do that. All right, so I'm just going to leave everything open. It's not a problem. In a later video, I'll come back and talk about all road types. This is where you limit it to separate railroads, and then I'm definitely going to talk about these all loads and stuff when we have a video on creating schedules, because this is very, very important over here. Now, let's talk about these settings. So we have normal, first in, first out, last in, first out. So these are basically the car pickup order. So whenever you build a train out of this yard, or build a train that runs through the yard, it's going to pick up cars from the yard. And if you have normal, then what it does is it's going to choose the cars that have the least amount of actual moves so far. That way, cars that have potentially been sitting around get picked up. If you're doing first in, first out, then that means that whatever car, if you have 2 cars and one of them came in first, well, that car is going to be the one to get chosen to go out. And if you have last in, first out, it's just what it sounds like. In that case, the most recent car to be put in the yard is going to be the one to pick up. If you have a double-ended yard, you want first in, first out. If you have a first in, first out if you're going to be placing the cars on one end and picking them up from the other, which we will do. And then you want to do last in, first out if you have either a stub yard or you're going to be picking up and dropping off cars in the yard from the same side. This will leave cars in the back of your yard tracks. If that bugs you, then keep the FIFO. FIFO will keep cars moving in and out of your yard. All right. Once again, we'll come back to this when we actually start setting up trains and routes. This is where you can limit which trains or routes will actually have access to this track. We are absolutely going to do that because on this track, there's a certain train that I do not want to set any cars out on this track. I only want it to pick up from here. So when it comes to that point, we will come back and set that up. All right, for now, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. If you wanted to add yourself a comment, you can. There are ways to make that show up on your switch lists. For now, I'm just going to leave that blank. All right, now I'm going to set up track 2. So I'm going to say track 2. This is the local track, and this one is 972 feet. Okay, so we're going to add that CI track. All right, I'm going to leave it as first in, first out. I'm not going to deal with any of these just yet. I will go ahead, though, and clear the car types because for the local, we only want to ship out the cars that are serving the industries in towns that the local is serving. So we have box cars. We have tank cars. We'll just say, let's say it's a tank gas just for fun. It doesn't really matter right now. And then we have reefers. So we'll do reefer right there. And then we have covered hopper grain cars. So food grade covered hoppers. Those are right there. Hop grain. All right, that's your covered hopper grain. So we only have 4 car selections. That means that those are the only 4 car types that can get put on this track. Okay. So now let's say, for example, that we only could ship empty grain cars because maybe they get loaded there. Well, then I would go to track accepts all loads. I would click this. And it brings up this menu. I'm going to click use car type and load. All right, and we're going to say accepts only. So for the hopper grain, if I only wanted to ship empty grain hoppers onto this track, I'm going to leave the E and I'm going to click add load. So that means now this track will only accept grain hoppers that are empty. Okay, if I don't add the other car types, even though I have them selected, it's not going to ship them. So I need to go ahead and add the others. Let's say boxcar, we can do empty and loaded because it doesn't matter. And I'll talk more about that later when we set the industry up. Let's say for reefers, they have to be empty. And let's say for tank gas, they have to be loaded. So what's going to happen? It will not ship empty tank cars. It will not ship loaded reefers to this track. And it will not ship loaded hopper cars. So we have the boxcar and the tank car will be deliveries to the industry. And the grain hoppers and the reefers will be pickups from the industries there in town. Okay, I'm going to hit save track. All right. If you need to go back and watch that a couple times, make sense of it, that's perfectly understandable. That can be a bit complicated. You do have to do some thinking ahead when you're building these tracks. So it's okay if you come back and change that later. And you never know. Once I set up custom loads, I may come back and change that some more. All right, let's set up our next 2 tracks. We have track 3. Is the track that is holding cars that are headed to CN. So I'm going to say that. So I have a little note to myself. These are 750 feet long. I'm going to keep everything selected for these. We're still going to do first in, first out, and we're not going to limit any road types or load types. All right, save that. And then we're going to do track 4 are the cars that are coming from the CN train. So I'm going to add that track. And we're going to keep everything selected. In this case, later on when we actually set up the train, we will come in here and do a limitation to make it where only the Canadian National train can set out cars on this track. And then that way, no other train from the KCS will drop cars off here. They will pick them up, but they won't drop them off. And then once all that happens, of course, maybe we'll demo some operations so you can kind of see how that works. All right, I'm going to hit save CI track and X out here. So take a look at that. We've got all of our FIFOs, we've got our 4 spurs, and this load with the A5 tells us that there are 5 restrictions on loads for that track, which is what we want. So that's good. All right, as far as setting up the yard, for now, that's it. Like I said before, once we go and we get the trains and the route set up, we'll have to come back and make some modifications. But as far as getting it in the database with the names and the links and the car types, we've done it. All right. That's it for now. Thanks for joining. Make sure to subscribe. Stay tuned for video number 4 coming out. Appreciate it, and we will see you guys next time.